Okay, we're right back behind the flipper. I'm going to go ahead and pull the flipper, and right here, this metal arm that you see going up and down, the big silver one, at the end of it is a piston. It's a spring, and that's what launches your balls. On that, right down here at the bottom, there is a nut, a bolt actually, and that bolt is holding a wire in place. And what happens is that wire moves this plastic part. This plastic part engages with the ball load lever on the back of the shooter assembly, so those two ball load levers interact with each other to load a ball. So that metal has to be in the right position so that it pushes the plastic enough to load the ball. Now, if you ever are playing a whole bunch and you get so many jackpots, this is really more for in the parlors. At home you really don't have that problem, but in the casinos where they have thousands of balls feeding the machines, you could win so many that your bottom receiving tray would start to fill up with balls, and if it started to fill up, the balls would start to back up this tunnel here, and as they back up this tunnel, they would weigh down this white part here, and as they weigh down that white part, it pivots this wire, and it pivots that wire up, and so if you shoot, that wire actually holds your ball load lever out of the way so you can't play anymore. It won't actually load balls. So once you empty balls out of the receiving tray, that part drops down and now you can play. Next I'll show you, well I won't show you now, I'm going to show you the ball assembly in of the other machine, and then we'll get to the latch. Here is the back of the door of that other machine where the shooter assembly is actually attached to the door. There's several things I want to talk about. First, this wire coming through the back. Now you remember on the other machine, the wire coming through the back actually went through that metal part that would block the flow of balls. The way this one works is that metal wire, which right now is in the down position but it lifts up, it rides underneath this wire here. And this wire pivots up and down. So as this wire lifts up, it lifts up this wire, and you can actually see some metal in here going up and down. It's doing two things. One, it's lifting the sign out of the way, the weight sign, and two, it's lifting the bar out of the way that blocks the flow of balls from the play tray into the shooter assembly. So whenever you close the door, you have to make sure that this wire goes over top of this one. Sometimes you have to bend this and you have to test it to get it to the right position so that the sign drops exactly like it should, so that lever drops and everything's working properly. Next, on these Model A's, they have a ball load lever here, has a big weight on this side, and on this side it's got a post. Now this post, it's a clear post, I'll zoom in a minute. It has to stick through the back of the machine, and it has to go under the ball load lever from the back. Sometimes when you close the door, that post will want to hit that lever, and what you have to do is you have to reach your hand around from the back and lift that other one up so the post goes underneath it. This one also has a door that you can open. The way this one works is you have two tabs here, you have to pinch those, and then you can swing it open. And that gives you access to clean out the inside. To close it, you just push it like such. If you had a bunch of balls in there, you could just pull down on this lever, and that would pull, all the balls would come out. And I'll zoom in. Okay, I'm going to pull down on the flipper, and you can see the spring piston right here sticking through the shooter assembly. Drop the ball in the shooter lane. So there's the ball. Here you can see the clear post, and so but instead look underneath the ball, and yeah, you can kind of see the clear plastic lever there pivoting down. That one that's pivoting right there, that's what would push down this post here. Okay, here we are from the back of the machine. I'm going to pull down on the flipper. So it's moving this ball load lever here, the clear plastic one. It's attached to a plate here. There's a couple of screws. If it's not lining up right, you might loosen those screws and this whole thing slides left or right a little bit. But now I want to close the play tray door, and when I do, actually this time it went, that post is above this lever, so no matter how often you shoot, nothing would happen, because I needed to make sure that this lever is above the post instead of the other way around. So I'm going to open the door, and what I'm going to do is I'm manually going to push that lever, then close the door, so now the lever is above the post the way it's supposed to be. Oh, there's this latch here. So this one is what you operate. If you pull down, it will do the same thing what the key would do. So if you turn the key from the front, it would pivot this part. And let me show you what happens when you pivot that part. So as I pivot that part, it unlatches a latch up here at the top. It's also unlatching a latch here at the bottom, and then I could swing the machine open from the frame. Be careful if you're doing this because it's top heavy. So if this frame were mounted in the wall in a pachinko parlor, you can access it and swing it open. You don't need that again for home use, but if you do mount your machine in the wall for your home, you may just want to disable the latches here. Remove those two latches. That way you can swing it open anytime you want. Now these machines don't need any electricity to operate. They operate off of gravity alone. However, when they were in the parlors in Japan, they were usually wired to a transformer into the wall. So what they usually had is they had a fuse panel here, a little block that had some thumb screws where wires were going in. They had a fuse and then wires going to the light bulbs of the machine. The fuse was there because since it was plugged into the wall, if there was a surge, they didn't want to blow the light bulbs. For home use here in the States, if you can run this off a 6-volt battery, a 9-volt battery, you don't need a fuse. We usually replace all the switches and wirings and light bulbs because the solder joints are bad and etc. So that's why you're not seeing the fuse here, but normally there's one from the factory. We've got this top supply tray here. This needs to be full of balls, and as you add balls to it, it'll push down on this arm here. There's a weight here. The other side of the arm that has a wire that's going to activate a micro switch here that we've added, and that switch will turn on this light when there's no balls in here. So right now there's no balls. This light would normally be on. In fact, I'll go ahead and plug the battery up. So the light is on. Now as I add balls, the weight of the balls pushes that part down and turns off the light. Now the balls enter, they come across this track and they make this turn. Let me zoom in and show you something on the turn. Behind this white plastic there is a metal tab that's attached to a spring, and right now it's flipped to the right, which is where it should be. I could flip that to the left. And what it does in that position, it locks this in place. So that's locked closed, so no balls can flow from the track and the supply tray down to the recycler tray where they need to be. What that was meant for is if the service attendant wanted to work on the machine, they could flip this down, lock the balls up here while they do their work. For home use, you really don't need it. You have to have it flipped back over to the right. Otherwise, this part can't move freely. Now, as balls come down through this turn and down this chute, they'll enter into your recycler tray, and they'll roll down the recycler tray over in here into your jackpot seesaw. It's the seesaw you can see through the window in the front that pivots whenever you get a jackpot. So they'll come in here and they'll stop. And once balls start to back up, and once there's enough balls in this tray, they'll push down on 2 white levers underneath here. And as those white levers get pushed down, it's hard to do this upside down, there we go. As those levers push down, those levers are what pivot this item and shut off the flow of balls. So as long as there's a few balls there to weight it down, it'll shut off the flow. And then once you get a couple of jackpots, this tray will empty, and so more balls will be allowed to flow and fill up this recycler tray.